When sorrows come, they come not single spies, but in battalions. From Shakespeare's Hamlet, King Claudius says these lines in Act 4, Scene 5. This reflects the multitude of compounded tragedies befallen the king. So too, in disaster situations, whether it be nature created, hurricane, tornado, tsunami, earthquakes, floods, fires, or human inflicted disasters, terrorist attacks, shootings, mass murders. The carnage left is devastating, far reaching, and life changing. Collective trauma is described as a blow to the basic tissues of social life that damage the bonds attaching people together and impairs the prevailing sense of community. As a counselor, approaching someone who just went through a disaster, I would begin by reassuring them that all the emotions they are experiencing are normal. Their sense of security and community have been torn asunder, and I would ask, what can I do to help you now? The first response, from my perspective, is to comfort the person by being present, listening if they wish to talk, addressing their physical needs, such as food, safety, medical attention. They are probably feeling vulnerable, possibly in shock. So I would speak calmly by reassuring them that help is here and will remain throughout. What kind of impact may the stress of going through a disaster have on a person's mental well-being? From the readings in Miller's text, the video, Stages of Disaster, and a Disaster Mental Health Response Handbook, the stress on a person's well-being having gone through a disaster may show as confusion. Individuals may be stunned. They may demonstrate anxiety, shock, anger, sadness, hopelessness, grief, denial, horror. These normal responses will subside over time, but many emotions will likely resurface and will need to be addressed. If not dealt with through counseling, the likelihood that PTSD will develop is strong, depending on the individual's situation and the type of disaster. For example, studies have shown that deliberate violence creates longer-lasting mental health effects than natural disasters or accidents. Also, it is important to be sensitive to communities that pre-disaster were vulnerable to societal ills such as poverty, lack of adequate medical care, and economic struggles. Such a situation was evidenced in Louisiana in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. The stages of recovery are not always linear. However, based on the video Stages of Disaster, they often follow a pattern beginning with pre-disaster, where people have been complacent in thinking that the 100-year flood or disastrous hurricane will not happen. This would be the time for local government to prepare in the event of a catastrophic event. The next stage is the disaster, which can extend beyond the event to the aftermath, such as in the case of Hurricane Katrina, when the levees broke, wreaking more havoc on the already devastated surrounding communities. For survivors experiencing a series of events, the disaster is compounded by additional crises. The heroic phase follows the disaster when the world becomes focused on the community, media attention covers the relief efforts as organizations, volunteers, and money pour in. Stories of rescues and lines of people being fed are broadcast. The honeymoon phase flows from the heroic phase. When help and money continue to come in, there is a sense of hope, a moving forward, encouragement, resources that provide reassurance that everything will be okay. There are heartwarming stories of survival and resilience. After a period of time when the news coverage and attention have turned to other events, possibly other disasters, and the true realization of the impact has set in, the harsh reality turns from hope and optimism to fatigue, depression, and despair that the community may never return to its former state. Then there is the reconstruction phase of rebuilding, starting a new normal, the possibility of doing things better. Hopefully, this is when government and policy changes come into effect to prepare for future disasters and make changes from the knowledge gained so that we can be and do better. Local collaboration and communication are important to assure the safety, public health, and economic security for all. Paying particular attention to the inequities in the distribution of resources, federal disaster aid, social opportunities, recovery, and looking at the pre-disaster conditions to help rebuild better than before. Mental health counselors are needed throughout the recovery and available before, during, and after when sorrows come. I have included the following resources in my response. Houston Christian University video titled Stages of Disaster, Jerry Miller's text Fundamentals of Crisis Counseling, Raphael's Disaster Mental Health Response Handbook, and Short-Term Solutions to a Long-Term Challenge, Rethinking Disaster Recovery Planning to Reduce Vulnerabilities and Inequities from the 2020 International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health. Thank you for listening.